Duffy here. Welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be on Fanspo.com, my personal favorite NBA trade machine website. Today we're going to be looking at the Portland Trailblazers. Now before we get started, kind of just show around the website here. I'm going to do a whole video just basically showing the different mechanics of the website, but basically you can look at different trade proposals. So you can do big boards, mock drafts, look at other grids even. And then you can do your own big board, mock draft lottery simulator, so on and so forth. Those of which I'll be doing later. But for now, we're going to be just looking mainly at the trade machine and cap manager on this site. And for today's video, we're going to be looking at the Portland Trailblazers here. Now, you might be wondering, why the Blazers, they're kind of in a random, they're kind of a random team. They're kind of in a weird spot as a franchise. Well, that's what makes them interesting. They have some interesting players, such as DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, Robert Williams, and then some of the young guys such as Denny, who they traded for in the offseason, Scoot Henderson, Donovan Clingan, who they drafted 7th overall in this past draft, and you have Shaedon Sharpe, who has definitely star potential, but obviously needs to stay healthy in order to untap that potential. And then there's some other young guys as well, such as Chris Murray, Ryan Rupert, Toumani Camara, etc., and here's some of the other guys. But the Blazers are in a weird spot because, they have some win now players that I've mentioned, but they're not in a win now position, obviously, as they were 15th in the West and had a 21-win season, marking that tie for the 4th worst record in the league last season. So in today's video, we're kind of just going to be making some hypothetical trades to continue this Portland rebuild, send them in the right direction so that they can get some younger talent in there in exchange for their veterans, and they can fully embrace their rebuild. So with that, they've already kind of started their rebuild with the Dame trade in the last offseason, adding on Yusuf Nurkic, Keon Johnson, and Nasir Little in a 3-team trade that got them DeAndre Ayton right here, Drew Holiday, in control of 3 Milwaukee picks, which are here, 28, 29, 30. 2 of those being swaps, 1 unprotected in 2029. While they also got Drew Holiday in that trade, they also shipped him off to my favorite team, the Boston Celtics, right here, in exchange for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and then a couple more picks. It was a Warriors pick, and ended up being Bob Carrington, the 14th overall pick, as well as this 29 unprotected just unprotected pick. And then later on draft night, they would send that 14th pick, Bob Carrington, who is right here, Carlton Carrington, as well as Malcolm Brogdon, and then that swap, which is here. It says via Portland unprotected, but it's actually the second most favorable between that pick, Milwaukee and Boston, in 2029. So the second of those picks will convey to Washington in 2029. So that's kind of where the Blazers stand right now. I believe that the rebuild isn't complete. They need to tear down the roster a little bit more by trading some of their veterans that I'm going to showcase today. So let's begin. The first player that I will be looking deeply into trading is Jeremy Grant. Now, he just signed a big contract last offseason. He has 5 years, 160, 4 years, 132 remaining. He has 3 guaranteed years left before he has a player option in his final season, which presumably he would pick up. Now, if you look at his stats here, I'll pull him up in a second. Let's see, Jeremy Grant averaged 21, 3.5, 3 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 45 from the field, 40 from 3, and 82 from the line. Not bad, definitely a very solid player, but he definitely doesn't fit into what what the Portland Trailblazers are trying to do right now, which is accumulate young talent and get better for the future. So today we're going to be focusing on trying to get Jeremy Grant to a contender and getting the Blazers more picks, young players, matching salaries, things of that nature. So the first team I'm going to be looking at trading Grant to is the LA Lakers, probably the team that he's been tied to the most. They have the salaries to match, such as Rui, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, and some other younger players. although there are probably other packages, other teams out there that may throw better offers out there. I don't know if there's really much of a better fit for Grant than the Lakers currently. So let's propose Grant here to the Lakers in exchange. Rui has to be center point of this trade. They play the same position. Matt, 17 million, 29 gets him 17 million closer. And then we probably have to throw in a guy like Gabe Vincent, although his contract is pretty rough here. 11.5 mil the next 2 years. Definitely could be better, but, it's just for salary matching purposes, he makes sense. And then this might be rough right here, but they got to get a young player from the Lakers. I believe that would be either Jalen Hood-Schifino or Dalton Connect. I think Connect would be the piece that the Blazers would be asking for in a trade for Grant. And now now that the Blazers are getting a 3-for-1, I believe they would have to throw in one more player just for less roster complexity. So I believe they could throw one of their lower salary players. Now this might be interesting, but I think Kumara could be a good piece of this trade too. Although he was one of the more valuable pieces that the Blazers got for Dame Lillard last offseason, I think he could be an integral part to a contender. He can kind of play that point of attack defender role off the bench for the Lakers. He's on a cheap contract. So I think throwing him in there with the addition of Jeremy Grant could be good for the Lakers. So we'll throw him in there. And then the picks. So obviously to start with, the 29 unprotected has to be in there. They could trade any of these picks, but 2027 they don't have their own picks, so that's where things get kind of tricky. So these two picks, unless they're swaps, are kind of obsolete at this point. So it's just easiest for now to trade the 29 pick unprotected, and then debating between either doing a 2030 swap or 2031. Now the Blazers already have a 2030 swap with the Bucks, so that wouldn't really be the most valuable. Although this would mean the Blazers would get the best between their pick, Milwaukee's pick, and then the Lakers pick. So that gives them more optionality when it comes to swapping between other teams, potentially getting a higher pick. But since it's so far down the road, they might as well just ask for another pick outright. So here I believe that the Lakers would give up a lightly protected 2031 pick, top 3 or 5. That's up for debate. I'll just say top 5 for now. I think that feels best for the Lakers value-wise. And then maybe they just throw in a second-round pick as well, just to sweeten the deal. But let's try it here. And there we go. 0 wins, even trade, according to Fanspo. Blazers getting Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Connect, a second, and 2 very valuable picks in exchange for Jeremy Grant, arguably the best player, and Toumani Camara. Now, let me know in the comment section if you believe this trade is fair, and if not, what adjustments should be made to this trade to make it more fair for both sides. So now we have this trade right here for Jeremy Grant. Another team that I thought was interesting for Jeremy Grant that could be a good fit is the Sacramento Kings. And you may be wondering, they already have 2 wings in DeMar DeRozan, who they traded for this offseason in a signing trade with the Bulls. And they also have Keegan Murray, who plays the same position as Jeremy Grant. However, I think in the Kings' case, they kind of lack that, true definitive shooting guard, or that 5th starter, kind of on the fence between either Kevin Huerter or Keon Ellis. Now, I don't believe Monk will be starting. I think he'll be coming off the bench as their 6th man. I think that's the role best suited for him. But to really round out that starting 5 for the Kings, who kind of just want to accumulate talent and compete in the West as it stands right now, I think Jeremy Grant could be a really interesting addition for this team. So let's try and make a deal work for Sacramento. So let's first send Grant there, and I believe the first player that has to be included will be Kevin Huerter, for salary matching purposes. Now, his contract is a little rough. You have $16.8 million this year, and then almost $18 million in 2025. For only 10 points a game, I get it. But in the case of the Blazers, they're trying to just accumulate picks and young talent. Huerter's only 26, so maybe he can off the bench. He can shoot lights out from three, and then a couple of years they're off the contract, or later down the road they'll look to move him again. So it gives him a little bit of flexibility there. And then I think just for salary matching purposes, they throw in Trey Lyles. It doesn't really matter. He can either get bought out or they trade him later again, or he can even play just as a stretch four off the bench. And then the most intriguing part of the package, I should say, is the picks. The Kings can trade all their picks after 2026 because they do owe their pick top 12 protected to the Hawks. And then if they land within the top 12 in next year's draft, then that becomes top 10 protected in 2026. And if that doesn't convey and the Kings still get that pick, then it becomes 2 seconds, making any pick 2027 onwards available to trade. So now with that being said, I believe that the Blazers would ask for almost all their picks, in which it would make sense for the Kings to give up since they're clearly getting the best player in this trade. So with that being said, I believe 27 will go over there unprotected, as well as 29. And then some swaps as well. Although, let's see. I might do this instead, just to make the swaps make a little bit more sense. We're going to do 28 unprotected, lightly protected 2030. And then, oh wait, no, actually, 29. Yeah, because that might be tricky with the 29 swap. So let's see here. If we do 27 unprotected as well as 29 top 3 protected to the Blazers, then we can kind of get some swaps with the Bucks involved here. Again, more optionality here. But in the case of the 28 and 30 picks, that's unprotected, that's top 3. Then just straight up swap. Let's just say we get another swap in there for 2029, just say for either one of these picks. And then 2031, or we'll do 2027. That'll be the first pick they can trade. We'll do a swap. And then less favorable. Let's just say for this that the Kings get the less favorable of Portland's pick, and then whatever's remaining from the Bucks or Celtics from the Avdija trade to the Wizards. Let's see here if this works. Try trade, and here we go. I see -3 for the Kings, +3 for the Blazers, but I do believe this would raise to at least a floor for the Kings and would make them a definitive playoff team. So kind of disregard the -3 there because clearly the Kings are getting the better player in the trade. As for the Blazers, they're accumulating control of 4 first-round picks and then just some salary. Kind of similar to the Mikal Bridges trade to the Knicks. However, Jeremy Grant, I don't believe, is as talented as Mikal. Not saying he's a bad player, but I just think in terms of like the defensive upside, Mikal's obviously has that to his advantage. And then the offensive skill set is still pretty similar, I would say, for Grant and Bridges. But Grant makes more money, more years, and he's older. So a few years older than Bridges, so the value doesn't quite match Mikal Bridges, in terms of getting like 6 first-round picks. But, control of 4 picks definitely isn't something to sneeze at for the Blazers, and I think definitely could be something to consider if Portland does get that call from the Sacramento Kings. Again, let me know in the comments if this trade makes sense for both sides, what adjustments need to be made to make it fair for both teams. So now we kind of got an idea of what Jeremy Grant's trade value is. He's probably the most valuable player on the Trailblazers as it stands. Probably their best player, so it would make sense for the Blazers to ask for a lot in return. Not saying he would go for like a Mikal Bridges trade off or anything like that, but I think getting control of a good amount of picks would definitely make sense. And just the Blazers can keep adding to that draft arsenal so that they can make a big trade, or they can just keep drafting young players and eventually developing a young core around Scoot, Henderson, Shane Sharp, Donovan Clingan, Danny Avdija, and so on. So to switch gears to a different player on the Portland Trailblazers, let's look at Robert Williams. So, as a former Celtic, Robert Williams is near and dear to my heart. He's one of my favorite players on the Celtics. It sucks to see him go down with all these injuries, but at the end of the day, they did happen. He still has 2 years left on his deal, a pretty team-friendly deal, so he's not overpaid by any means. But he just can't stay in the court, unfortunately. He only played 6 games last year. Got hurt pretty much right out the gate. Missed the entire season for the most part. But still can provide good value, good defensive value for sure, for a contender, as he did with the Celtics a couple of years ago. So it's going to be interesting to gauge what his trade value will be. I don't know if he can get a first-round pick back, but if anything, it'd be like matching salary and some seconds, or like a late first-round pick. So it's going to be interesting, like trying to find a team. With the Knicks would make a lot of sense given Mitchell Robinson, his injury history, but then again, it's like you're replacing him with another injury-prone big, which really wouldn't be ideal for the Knicks. And then some other teams in the West potentially could make sense. Maybe like the Warriors, if they want an upgrade at the 5 spot. They have Trace Jackson-Davis right now, and then Draymond Green running the small ball 5 for the most part. But if they want to get more defensive versatility, lob threat for sure, then Robert Williams could be a good fit over at Golden State. So obviously Looney would be in the deal to start with, just to match salary position. And then tempted to throw in like a Gary Payton. I don't know if Moses Moody makes sense. That might be a little too rich to ask for someone like that. But that could be an option here in this case to get Robert Williams. But let's just see what happens if we throw in GP2. Maybe throw Rob over there, and then maybe get another player for salary matching purposes. So they're trading a guard and a big. Ideally, another guard goes back to Golden State. It's going to be tough to kind of draw up here. Could be like a Jabari Walker, who only has 1 year left on his deal. I think Banton will get good runs, so I don't know if they'd want to trade him. With the amount of wings they have on the roster right now, Chris Murray there as well, I think Jabari Walker could be the odd man out, potentially. So Jabari Walker could be thrown in this trade. And then when it comes to picks, the Warriors have basically all their picks except like a top 20 protected pick in 2030, which they gave up in the Jordan Poole Chris Paul trade last offseason. So I think a 2025 maybe lottery protected, like top 16 to 18 first could be in play here to give up for Robert Williams. Then if he gets hurt and the Warriors have a down year, then it conveys to 2 second-round picks in the future. So essentially, Warriors miss the playoffs for whatever reason, then that pick conveys to say like these 2 Hawks second-round picks. So it's either they get like, pick 17 or something like that in next year's draft, or they get 2 seconds later in the future in exchange for Robert Williams, who gives them more defensive versatility and more athleticism down low. So let's see if this trade goes through. It does. You have the +1 there for the Blazers because they're getting 2 players that actually can play and aren't regarded as much as injury-prone players. And then the Warriors to -1 because given Robert Williams' injury history, but they are getting the better player in the deal. Jabari Walker has interesting upside. And then the main piece that the Blazers are getting back is his first-round pick that could end up being decently valuable. But again, 2 second-round picks if it doesn't convey. Let me know in the comments if this trade is fair for both sides, and let me know what adjustments could be made to make the trade fair and even. All right, so that's the Warriors side. Now, if there's any other teams that see here that he's the 5th trending player to be traded on Fanspo, so that's pretty interesting. A lot of people think the same thing, that he can be a valuable piece on a championship team, or at least a contending team. So the Warriors are 1. Another team, obviously the Pelicans would be really interesting, but they don't really have the salary to really match. They're not going to trade Herb Jones or anything like that. That would not make any sense. I mean, the Blazers would love Herb Jones, but the Pelicans definitely would not trade him just for Robert Williams. They would have to deal him in a star of some sort. He's not going anywhere. So we can kind of rule out the Pelicans there. The Clippers maybe, if they want a better backup behind Zubats. although they don't really have many picks to deal, as they owe all these swaps and unprotected first to either Oklahoma City or Philly. So they would, if anything, they would deal these 2 second-round picks, which I'm not sure the Blazers would value all that much. Then going forward here, just kind of looking at the rest of the league here. Cleveland also is interesting, but again, they already have 2 bigs, so why would they want another one? The Knicks, like I said, but they don't really have the salary either. They can't take back more money in a trade because they are a hard cap team. So for them, I don't think trading for Rob Will makes the most sense at the moment. Let's look at the rest of the league here, kind of give a sense as to what teams could be looking to give up for Robert Williams. The Grizzlies are another interesting one because they have Zach Edey on the roster, but they don't really have too much center depth as it stands. Look at like Brandon Clark could potentially fill that role, but I think he's kind of undersized, more of a stretch 4, or more of a power forward, but not really a stretch 4. Doesn't shoot the ball all that much. So maybe we look at like a Robert Williams for Brandon Clark swap, even just player for player, and then maybe the Grizzlies throw in a couple seconds to get the deal done. Give up like this Houston OKC second, and then this Hawks second, and then we'll try the trade, and there we go. So Brandon Clark and 2 seconds for Robert Williams. They're banking on Rob Williams being healthy and providing that defensive upside that Memphis has been missing from the 5. Pair him up with Triple J in the front court. That could be a scary defensive front court. Overall defense too, when you got Marcus Smart on there too. And then for the Blazers to get Brandon Clark, who can give them more of a roll and cut big skill set, and then they get some draft picks as well. Let me know in the comments if this trade is fair. Let me know what adjustments I need to make in order to make it fair for both sides. And then I think that's pretty much it for Robert Williams. There could be more teams that are interested in him as the season progresses. I think for now, the two of the teams that make the most sense in this case are the Grizzlies and the Warriors. Now that we have covered Robert Williams, I think one more player on the Trailblazers that kind of could be on the move, makes sense to be moved, would be Anthony Simons. Now, he is only 25, so you can say he kind of fits with the young core, but he is due for an extension pretty soon. He has 2 years left on his deal. He's a good offensive player, averaging 23, 4, and 5.5 assists last season, but there are some injury concerns and some positional overlaps when it comes to the backcourt, because ideally you want to have a lineup where you're running Scoot and Sharp out there for the long-term future of this team. But Simons makes it difficult to where you kind of have to have one of them come out the bench, that more than likely being Shaedon Sharp. But I think for the best interest of the Blazers for going forward, I think playing Sharp at the 2 next to Scoot makes the most sense, and they move Anthony Simons in a corresponding trade. So the team that kind of comes to mind first is the Magic. They can kind of use some shooting in that backcourt. Right now they have Jalen Suggs and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who they signed to a 3-year deal this offseason. More of a defensive 3-and-D point of attack guard. They still do need more of a shooting kind of offensive-oriented guard, as Suggs and KCP are more defensive-minded. So I think throwing Simons in there could make sense to kind of give them more of an offensive spark. So let's see what a trade to the Magic would look like for the Magic. Now, this is where it kind of gets tough because, they have to include Cole Anthony, who's kind of been vital to their rejuvenation over the last few years. They do have some other point guards. They have Anthony Black on the roster, so he could kind of fill in that backup point guard spot. Say they do trade Cole in this trade. And that's, he's a top 6 pick. So ideally, you'd want to give him some more playing time if you're the Magic, see what he has to offer, at least as a backup for now. So we can trade Cole over to the Trailblazers, and then you just have to get some matching salary to finish it out. Now, that's going to be harder to find. I think Jet Howard would be in this trade, former lottery pick. And then Caleb Houston as well to match salary. And I think maybe one pick, because they're getting some young talent here, Cole, Jet, Caleb Houston. I think maybe one pick would get it done. Give up like this Nuggets pick that will be later in the draft. Or they can give up one of these Magic picks down the road. Maybe they give up their pick with a slight protection on it, like top 10 protected. And then we try this trade here. It works even for both teams in terms of wins added on both sides. The Magic get Anthony Simons, who can give them an offensive spark, more so than Cole Anthony does, because the point production is almost double. And then the Blazers get Cole, who can back up Scoot, can be their sixth man. And then they get some young talent, young potential talent to grow and develop with the rest of the young core, as well as a potentially valuable first-round pick in next year's draft. Let me know in the comments if this trade is fair, or if not, what adjustments need to be made to make this fair for both sides. Now we can look at other teams for Simons, other than the Magic, to see what makes sense for both sides. So now, his value is a little bit strange because, like I said, of the contract, and he's still only 25, but he doesn't play defense all that well. He's not known for his defensive stature, and I think he would be best suited on a championship team if he was like a six man, but remains to be seen if he'd be willing to take a role such as that. Let's see here, another team potentially that's looking for someone like Anthony Simons. A little bit tough. Maybe the Lakers if they don't trade for Grant, but say they do in this case. Another Sacramento shooting guard potential if, like I said, they don't trade for Grant, but in this case they do. Utah has a lot of guards, so I don't see them getting involved. Same in Memphis. A challenge for a lot of these teams is getting the salaries to match. Another team that's interesting to me is the Hornets. They're looking for a starting shooting guard. Right now they're starting either Josh Green or Trey Mann at the 2, or Nick Smith Jr., neither of which are really elite options at this point of their careers. So maybe looking for an upgrade there next to LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller, and Tijon Solon, Mark Williams. Could be an interesting play. They have picks to move. They got all their picks going forward except like a lottery protected pick going, or like top like 18 protected pick going to the Hornet, or the Spurs rather. They'll never convey because the Hornets aren't good enough to ever, at least in the duration of that pick, to ever give that pick up outright. So they essentially have all their picks going forward, and they have some extra picks from Miami and Dallas that they got from the Terry Rozier trade, and this one from the PJ Washington trade at last year's trade deadline. So we can do Anthony Simons to the Hornets. Mainly they would be getting matching salaries, whether that's like Josh Green to start with, or they get Cody Martin, Vesely, Micic. One of those two are fine. Just see from a salary perspective, that works. And then the Blazers would obviously ask for at least one pick. Let's just say they throw in this Heat pick, and then maybe even the Mavs pick too. Both of the picks they got at the deadline. For Josh Green, Micic, 2 picks for Anthony Simons going over to the Hornets to slot in at the shooting guard spot. For the Blazers, they get Josh Green, who they can throw in as a 3-and-D guard / swing off the bench, who played for the Mavs in the finals. Has interesting upside. Could be a good role player for them going forward. And then Micic is kind of there for salary matching purposes, but can be a good mentor to some extent to Scoot Henderson and can back him up, give him some good minutes, or even behind Delano Banton, he can kind of take him under his wing as well, play behind him, and more than likely as a reserve in Portland. But they get 2 potentially valuable first-round picks in the 2027 draft for Simons. So we do the trade, and there we go. Even for both teams. Green, Micic, 2 picks for Simons. Again, let me know in the comments if this trade is fair. Let me know what adjustments need to be made to make it fair for both sides. So I think that's going to wrap up this video regarding the Portland Trailblazers. I don't think someone like DeAndre Ayton's going to get moved. I don't think his contract is movable at this point. He has this year 34 million and then 35.5. That's going to be really hard to move. I don't see a point in any team trying to acquire Aiden, and I think he's kind of fit as like that tank commander center for the Blazers until that contract can finally expire, and then they can give the reins to Donovan Clingan. So with that being said, that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and please